Welcome to another episode of Coming to Your Senses, where we talk about navigating the labyrinth of the mind and emerging victorious. And today, my guest is Brian Crowther. He is the co-founder and MD of Flower and White and Glorious Mess. He's an innovator and value-driven businessman who is willing to challenge himself both in and outside the workplace. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, Jules. That sounds good.
Does sound good, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, usually I launch into the first question about tell me about a time where you came to your senses and where and what that led you to. I have a sneaking suspicion, whilst you may have experienced many of those in your life, but the one that's been most prominent in the last year or so anyway is one that I was there to witness.
Yeah. So this is a biggie, actually. This was definitely, there have been multiple coming to my senses. Some driven by me and some probably driven by, factors around me, family, kids. But this was very much something that is driven by me and kind of what I think is really important. And this was coming to my senses with stopping drinking. So it's a biggie. This is a big subject and it's been a big journey, personal journey. And it's now coming up to about a year and a half since I came to my senses.
So what was it for you that, because I do know, but I'm going to pretend that I don't for the sake of our audience. But I know from my perspective that just to not drink alcohol, there was a number of little nudges that I had along the way. Did you have lots of nudges along the way that kind of got to you that point of questioning of, I think I want to give it up, or at least try giving it up? Or was it a one big thing that happened? Or what was it that brought you to that moment of going, I'm going to stop drinking?
Well, I'm 47. I'm probably from a time and a generation where I think a lot of us, Gen X, Gen Z, Gen X, Gen X.
Gen X, Gen X, yes.
Gen X, yeah, not Gen Z, not 12. Gen X. And, drinking's been something that's been normal, something really enjoyed. I had a great time drinking. And had many times I can look back, which was super fun, super social. Drink played a really kind of fun part of it. Definitely played into some of my confidence challenges that I have. And I had this, let's say, a kind of a love-hate relationship in that I loved to drink and I hated being drunk or the aftermath of being drunk. And I had spent a long time battling with this idea that life could be fun, life could be the same, life could go on, life could, I could find my place and I could turn up to a party, not just inviting the drunk Brian along. I could turn up the party just myself. And so, yeah, this has been something where there'd been lots of false starts and lots of this time next week or tomorrow, or, little micro coming to my senses, but never really that full commitment. And that was a big deal. That was difficult because it just wore me down for a long time. And there'd been a few occasions where I had just said, right, this really is enough. I'd been out with some friends, say, and the following day, we'd woke up in the morning, had a super positive night, and just everyone felt down and drained. And what had been brilliant time in the evening was marred by this real kind of downer that we had the following day. And it didn't just last the following day, it lasted 2, 3, 4 days after. And actually, I was like, I'm done with this. I'm done with losing time, being 47. I'm not saying time's ticking, but you start to feel that time is important, time's precious. And I just saw that drinking was a time thief that I could no longer justify. And that having kids, I've got 18-year-old, 17-year-old, very impressionable girls who kind of look to us, even though they probably won't admit this, for guidance and inspiration. And as you know, it wasn't a massive problem. You know, the fact that I can sit here talking today about it wasn't that I had a super booze problem. You know, but there was definitely, you know, like I think a lot of normal drinking habits is, you know, I've had a hard day at work. I'll have a pint, or I'll have a can of beer when I get home, or a glass of wine in a social context, in a de-stress context. And then it might turn to another one, and that would be that. And then, you know, Friday night, it might turn into a bottle of wine, etc., etc. And everything revolved around a drink. And it felt like that was the wrong way of, it was the wrong way around. And it was the wrong standard to be setting to the kids. And so there was a few things that have come together in almost perfect harmony.
If you've listened to the first episode of Coming to Your Senses, you'll know that in the early 2000s, I experienced a breakdown. I tried different therapies, but it was coaching that truly helped me transform my life. Initially, when I discovered coaching, though, I couldn't afford it. And it was a kind soul who sponsored me not only to have coaching, but also to train and become a coach. And my promise to them was that I would pay it forward. And I've done that in many ways over the years, initially through social media and private Facebook group called Confidence Revolution, and also through Coming to Your Senses, the podcast. But it triggered for me a passion to really want to make and create a secure, supportive space for people to be able to come together and have conversations that transform their lives. So I created the Conscious Conversations community. It's a group where we meet on more than once a month. We have a focused theme which is guided by the community and facilitated by me. There's hundreds of hours of learning and resources and materials to help you transform your life in a like-minded space. Because I get passionate about it, and because this was my promise to pay it forward, I'm offering you the opportunity to trial it for £1 for the first month. If that appeals to you, then head to juleswyman.online/conscious conversations offer. juleswyman.online/conscious conversations offer to explore what's available for you through being part of a conscious community. I can so relate to the whole time thief even thing, because I think that was one of the things for me. Was it wasn't actually the fun night that I was having, it was the realization that wiped out at least 1 to 4 days, depending on where I was at and what I was going on for myself. So what was the turning point that took those micro nudges into, actually, I'm going to do this?
Well, as a passionate podcast listener, I had spoken to a really good friend, Andy, who is probably one of my confidants and a good friend, and we talked about self-improvement in many different ways, and getting to the age where, you know, we probably, you know, there's some things that we could work on and have a positive effect. Maybe sometimes you think that you're a bit long in the tooth, but he inspired me to go on a journey to really, he's a super confident guy in my view. And obviously the way we met was through Andy. So, you know, just a bit of a name check to explain. And I then came to spend 6 months working with yourself. And I felt it was a real opportunity to the confidence for me had been most people that have confidence issues, everyone says, "Oh, you seem really confident. You know, you're always very chatty. You know, you're confident at work." But it's such an internal thing, and it was my own little micro, again, that kind of micro battle of walking into the workplace or walking into a party or sometimes walking into some family events where I just didn't feel maybe socially confident, and overplayed a lot of things in my head. And so we decided that there was, you know, a great synergy and we'd start working together. And when I first came to you, we talked about things that we wanted to change. And for me, this idea that drinking had its hold on me was a really big issue. You know, I have my own business. It's super pressurized. There's lots of actual stresses that demand clear thinking, that demands good decision making. People that rely on us as business owners to craft, to kind of take the right decisions and go in the right direction. And actually, I found drinking didn't always lead to the best outcomes in that. And it felt like a good opportunity to say, right, this is a line in the sand. I either choose to move forwards, meaningful way, or I keep doing the same thing and revert back to the same behaviour. I think this was coupled also with, we had a big family move, so we moved to the Lake District in July last year from Shrewsbury, which was significant for my wife Leanne. It was really significant for my teenage daughters, who suddenly their life was being uprooted, and for my son, this was a big life change, and I wanted it to work, and it felt like drinking wasn't going to be kind of harmonious in making that happen well and effectively, and so it seemed like a natural time to make that decision and to cut the ribbon and cross the line.
See what comes out the other side. It's I think one of the things I remember from that initial conversation as well is that, and weirdly, even before I haven't drunk alcohol now for what we on, so be 8 years, I think, 7-8 years. And one of the things I'm pretty sure that I said to you, and always say to people who say, actually, I want to cut down or cut out alcohol, is, look, dealing with your own stuff is one thing, but you're going to have to navigate other people saying, why? And it's interesting. I happened to see a clip on social media this morning of a TED talk where somebody's saying alcohol is the only drug that you have to justify why you're not taking it. Yeah, and it's really interesting. And, I always say to clients like yourself, if just make sure you've got your answers to that, because they all come in at different angles, and it might be family members or friends or work colleagues or business people or whatever that are like, but why are you not? And it's a real question, because it brings up their stuff. We're not meaning to by us not doing it, but it kind of triggers that.
Yeah.
But I remember and please correct me if I've got this wrong, but it was more of I'm just not going to do it for, I think it was a 30-day challenge, or it might have been a 60 or 90. Well, I can't remember what it was originally.
I like a challenge.
I know you do. But you always set a time frame around it. But this one was different.
Yeah, this was, so we said initially 30 days, which just seems like that was a long time. And there was, a few days are easy. It's very straightforward. It was, in there was a family party, or in there was maybe an office event, something where drinking would be expected, would be normal, it'd be standard. And so those were the big events that were challenging, because you had to go to these events, as you say, preparing your story. I think in the old days you'd say, I'm on antibiotics, so I can't drink at the moment. That was a fairly good excuse. People don't push back on that. And it's hard, because when you say, I'm stopping drinking, it's almost the assertion that there's a problem. You've got one. And actually, when I talk about it and I say, drinking 3 or 4 nights a week, well, some people go look at me like horrified, and some people are like, well, yes, I recognise that, if I'm being honest with myself. And some people think, God, that's nothing. But I think it was a fairly healthy guy. There was, do a lot of cycling, do a lot of running, do a lot of walking as a family. And so, it was part of a busy lifestyle, part of our social lifestyle. And so all of a sudden changing this narrative was quite a big deal, that needed some explanation, that needed justification. And you're right, people do self-reflect and think, well, actually, back to that, what does that mean about me? Why if he's doing it, he seems like a normal guy, why is he doing it? And I tried all sorts. I tried last year, 10% of the days I'll allow myself to drink. That didn't work. I tried, there's all sorts of, like dry January. It worked, and I felt, we got up to 100 days a couple of years ago, which felt great, and we felt the benefit. We're like, oh, wow, we're really productive, and with we're doing lots of sport, and you then have all these little small benefits, like you start eating better, just because you think, well, actually, I'm not snacking on that packet of crisps, and I'm not just nipping to the takeaway to get a takeaway, or I'm not going out for dinner. So then there's knock-on effects of you start getting small financial benefits where you've got a bit more money in your back pocket. And so there's positive upsides that come from this, which I guess we'll talk about a bit further, because, in fact, I'll go into it now. The biggest thing for me has been that I have this internal dialogue. I think we all do. We all do. I don't think that. I know we all do. And it's gone quiet. He, she, it, whatever it is, has just gone quiet. There was this little battle. It was have a little drink. You get home and I say to Leanne, do you want a drink? And these are all the standard ways. And I'm thinking, well, I hope she says, yes, I'll have a beer or a gin and tonic or a glass of wine. And if she says a cup of tea, I'll kind of like, begrudge that and have a cup of tea. And you'd kind of set up for that. So you'd start this micro looking for, how do I get the solution to the problem that my mind's trying to achieve, and create the situation. And you then start working through this, and it's really distracting. And your rational mind or your rational side is saying, well, actually, don't be silly. Just say, you lead and say, if you want a cup of tea, that'd be great, because actually I'm not going to drink tonight, or let's not drink tonight, or I bought some alcohol-free beers. So all this narrative kicks off that goes on, we'll just have one beer, and then we'll just have two. And actually, we deserve it because we've had a busy week, and we've just got a new customer at work, and, or there's some stress, or we're doing really good at job as parents. And one thing leads to another, loads of fun, blah, blah, blah. And then you wake up the following day, not sleeping well, agitated, thinking, oh, what did I do that for? I've done it again. I'm back where I was. I feel stupid. I'm annoyed with myself. But, it's okay. It's okay. You work hard and you go through all this dialogue. And that's just gone. It's like zero noise in my head, which is often worrying and a problem in itself. Because it's like it's just clarity. And actually that is, me and both myself and Leanne, which really helped stop drinking at the same time. Very similar style of drinking habits. She'll probably disagree completely and say, well, I drank definitely a little bit less, but, and that's neither here nor there. But we both stopped drinking at the same time, and which helps enormously having your other half on board. But suddenly we have all this time to think and talk, and that's not always a good thing, because drinking does have wonderful side effects. Like, you can just have a couple of pints and not worry about, the fact that payroll's due, or you've got that customer meeting with M&S, and you're like, oh, yeah, it definitely helps. Quiet
avoidance.
Avoidance. It is avoidance. It totally is avoidance. Which then leads into productivity and performance. And actually, I'm 47. I really don't want to be working like a dog all my life. We've been 17 years in the business. We've done an amazing job getting it from just a small kitchen startup to where we are today. And I want to see the light at the end of this tunnel at some point in a positive way in the business state. And actually, by not being at my very best and not being focused on the task, and even the same to be said with parenting, and the same to be said with personal health care and welfare, and kind of I want to be in the right place to see my 50s and 70s, and I just didn't feel like drinking was part of that anymore.
I think there's so much, and this is one of the reasons there's many reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast, but I think that the main things that I want to pull out is wise, because it wasn't that you would be quote unquote classed as an alcoholic, but it was that recognition that alcohol can creep in with any justification, because I've had a great day, because I've had a shit day, because we won that, we lost this, we gained that, the thinking mind will find any excuse in order to keep going. And I think that's just unfortunately it's part of the UK British culture, that we do that. And especially then, oh, well, it's Friday night, and therefore then that gives quote unquote permission as well. And I think many people don't realize the escalation of, well, it's just one drink, but it's rarely one drink. It is usually that one or two, mostly three. You do that 2, 3, 4 times a week. The accumulation of the impact of that on our health, on our bank balance, is really quite significant if you start to take note of it. And I'm finding it really interesting. You referenced that we're both Gen X, and actually a lot of the younger generation are starting to go, actually, I don't want to do that. And I'm curious as to where that could change. I think it's the same as you and I when we were younger. It would be nothing of walking into a room and every man and their dog smoking, whereas that's not allowed in the UK in the building anymore. And I think that in however many years' time, that shift is going to happen, because less and less people are drinking alcohol, and there's I think people have got a real curiosity of how can we still enjoy ourselves, again, quote unquote, without that alcohol, without that buzz. And I think very often what's going on is there's this escapism. And the bit that I'd love to pick up on, if it's okay with you to talk a little bit more about, is that utilizing alcohol as a way to deal with a perception of lack of confidence. Because I think I can 100% relate to that. That's exactly why I drank, especially when I was working in theatre. The amount that I was drinking was definitely because I was trying to cover up my perceived insecurities. Could you speak a little bit more about that, Brian?
Yeah, so I'm tall. I'm 6'2", and I feel like as part of my confidence thing, sometimes I stand. Well, typically you stand out when you're tall. Most people are 5 foot, whatever. And you're tall, you stand above people. So from quite a young age, you're always the big guy in the room, and people see you. I guess as a fairly young age, I was lively. Probably got a bit of a reputation of life and soul, which was associated often to when I'd had a drink. And I absolutely have the frustratingly very poor on-off button. So when it's on, it's game on. It's like party time. And, this was fantastic growing up in the 90s, went to university, growing up in the 90s, back in the day of clubbing and raving and all that sort of stuff, and so fairly lively and loved all that side of things. But of course, I felt super confident when you'd had a drink, and felt super confident in those situations when I had a drink. And then underneath the surface are these little bits of confidence around, I'm a bit tall for, I'm standing out. I need to be this persona, or these little, let's say, micro fears that I overthink a lot about what people are, how people are interpreting what I'm saying. So when I was asked to do this, Jules, I spent a long time deliberating, because I've been like, what will people think, and over analysing. And actually, in the end, it doesn't matter to me. Maybe this will resonate, maybe this won't with people. And in the old days, I would have had a drink to kind of get past that. And I associated drinking with feeling comfortable and confident in those environments. And then that's definitely the moniker of being fun sticks and stays with you. And actually, I'm fairly light-hearted, and I like that, and I want to maintain that, and that's really important. And so I then got to a point where you almost train yourself to believe that you can only be fun in those situations if you've had a drink. And sometimes you are fun. You're probably fun when you've had your first drink and second drink. When you've had your first drink, you see it all the time. Someone actually turns up and they're stressed, they've got lots going on, they've been running around, they've missed the bus, whatever it is. They have a drink. The first, everyone knows it's like one of the nicest feelings. That's better. Great, I've had a drink. And then they have the second one. They're like, good, right, I've had my second drink. And you're in the best place. If we could stop there and hold it at that point, this would be fine. However, you then go to your third drink and the fun side, you think you're being super fun. The chances are you're not being as fun as you think you are. And I definitely, then I go to this tall 6'2" and a bit bald guy who thinks he's super fun and actually probably not as fun as he thinks he is, definitely isn't as fun as he thinks he is. He's now a bit annoying. And it's not actually the person that came to the party, but is the person that has, now turned up. And that bothered me. That was a real issue because, there's been a couple of nights where behaviour may have said things that probably wasn't quite what I would have said when I was not drunk, and it's embarrassing. It's not who.
And then that perpetuates the next day as well, isn't it? I'm speaking for myself. I know that then it would be a case of that the hangover isn't just from the alcohol; it's the hangover of self-doubt, of self-questioning, of getting concerned about who I said, when I did, what I did, where am I, who am I, kind of thing. And I think that it is that illusion. I think that if I have a drink, unfortunately, we refer to it as having Dutch courage, and we refer to it, to doing that in order to be able to have the courage to be able to do things. But what I've witnessed, the longer that you stopped, and originally you were going to do it for that first month and just see what you experienced, and you were like, I'm loving this, the outcome of what I'm learning about myself and what I'm seeing, and actually I really like it. And it didn't mean that everything that was underneath it suddenly got resolved, but what I witnessed for myself and with you and with many other people is that actually what starts to happen is this: if you remove the thing that's covering stuff up, the other stuff comes to the surface, but actually then you can deal with it and get rid of it. Correct. It can be seen and exposed, and that is when it's one of the reasons why there's two main reasons. One is because I think your story is fantastic, and I think you're an amazing man for many, many reasons, and that's one of the reasons I wanted you on. But it was also because of the amount of people that you have inspired from this quote unquote simple thing to do, which is stop drinking alcohol. But the amount of people that it's not something you set out to do. You didn't leave the office here and say, right, well, if I'm going to do this, then Leanne, my wife, has to do it as well. But that happened. And then other family members have decided to give it a go, or at least reduce their alcohol. And then other people have started to recognize that as well, but it's not a drum that you've been beating and going, you have to give up alcohol. It's that they're seeing the difference in you and they're going, oh, well, that's possible. That's viable. I'd like some of that.
And that's absolutely right. And whether you're right, it was never about trying to. Certainly, I've not gone away and gone off. Sometimes you see people that stop something and then they go off like banging the drum and almost saying it's awful, it's evil. And it isn't like that for me. And, when we go out with friends, we want them to be okay. If they're drinking and if they want to get out, that's okay. It's not, oh, well, what if you shouldn't really do it. It's not about that. This is my journey. This is something that helps me. And actually what I think it's done is it's given people that bit of confidence and self-belief to go, that's what it looks like on the other side of the curtain. And I like that. And that's a big deal, that is, because we, along with all the other things that we've already said so far around why drinking is so okay, it is so okay. It's so ingrained within us. Every card you look at, celebrations card, there's 2 glasses of Prosecco. Every event, whether it's a school event or a party or anything, everything's got a drink at the absolute heart of it. So people think, I can't possibly do this. This isn't for me. I can't do it. It won't work. And And I get that. I totally get that. And there's been a little bit of a revelation that, maybe there's a little bit of boringness to it. There's a bit boring. There's definitely a bit of boringness. And that's a compromise. That's the compromise, is that there's a bit of boring. But what you get is the 10% of the time where maybe not in that. So if you've had a drink, you probably, let's say for 2% of your week, there's a really good moment where you're like, yay, this is great. And then maybe about 30%, 40% where you're like, oh, I'm recovering from that, or I'm feeling crap because of that. This is like, well, I don't have that 2%, but I've got that 40% back. So I'm like, so I've traded 2% of real good fun for 40% of I just feel much better. And so I think when people have seen this, they're like, actually, that's okay. I'm all right with that. And I get that side. I can see the reason now. And the big thing, again, if you need a drink to go to a party and have fun, that's the bit that's missing. I haven't not been to parties. I've been to probably more parties. And actually, 100%, I'm a better person at the party. Now, the people might completely disagree with me. But
you mean you're not dancing on tables and throwing your legs in the air and all that?
There's been a bit of that.
I need photographic evidence, please.
I'm sure there'll be some out there, but the difference is that I think, well, for me, and I'll say this is more my journey, drinking made me a bit lazy. So I'd turn up to a party and I'd be like, great, I can just bring these 4 beers, put them there, and there's the good mood, there's the good feeling factor, there's the fun, and that'd be
interesting.
That. And when I had that, I didn't really make a big effort because it was in that 4-pack of beers, let's say, as the idea. Now I don't have that to rely on. I have to go with a different mindset. And certainly from a confidence perspective, I want to go there and make meaningful, make the best of the opportunity, not just stand in the corner with a glass of Coke going, oh my God, this is so awful. You've actually got to go there and engage and ask people questions and listen to people's answers and try and be fun and try and be upbeat, but make an effort, and it's genuine. It's like it's a different level of connection and meaning. And so all of a sudden, where it would have been, a little bit lighthearted and, silly, and it may be an age thing, it may be a number of factors, but I think it's the drink thing. And I think that's where people, and, I've got someone very close to me, my sister, who definitely has shared my kind of anguish with the drink thing of, I'm definitely going to give up now. But, has loved it and enjoyed it and had loads of fun. She's joined me, and she's on about 160 odd days. We don't count.
That's amazing.
And she just loves it. She loves the lightness that it's brought to her life and huge amounts of kind of personal benefits and emotional, mental health benefits, and still has those challenges of, what do I do in this situation? And she was much more party than I was. So, it's a sign that. But
and again, this is why I wanted to share your story, because I think the ripple effect of you making that decision just over a year ago here has been amazing, and it was not your intent at all. But I think that the thing that I love about what you've just said is that when you're not drinking alcohol to go to an event, you're far more aware. And I think that awareness means I have a choice here. I either stand in the corner with my drink and kind of rock backwards and forwards and recognize that they're all getting drunk and I'm not, or I engage and I'm engaged and be present with the conversations, knowing that after that 3rd/4th drink it's usually about the 4th drink I notice is where the volume goes up and the inhibitions really start to disappear. And that, to me, that's usually when, from my own personal experience, that's when I'm like, okay, that's me done now. I'm out, because I know it's going to go far more hedonistic. But I've still had a great evening and I get to chat to people. And it was funny. I was at an event recently. It was last Wednesday, actually, a networking event, which is not my favorite thing in the world, but I still went. And I just hadn't clocked that other people were drinking alcohol. For some reason, it was in a bar, but I just didn't clock it. And it was only when I was talking to one of my friends at the end, and he just wobbled slightly, and like physically wobbled, and he said, "Oh, better stop it here then, because I've got to cycle home," but I hadn't
Wow.
actually clocked how many, the alcohol in that, because it had a different feel to the event and the session and things. I think it's slightly different as well now, because there are so many 0% out there that actually taste nice.
Oh, game changer.
Yeah, it is a game changer.
And this is back. And there's two parts to this. First of all, there's not a decent wine yet, and that's a shame. I think when decent wine comes in, it's going to be really interesting to see how that helps, because it's there to help people. And when we first started, like, the fridge was like full of anything. Let's try everything. Never really got the alcohol-free spirits. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's just like a tonic with a bit of cordial in. That's just the same,
Yeah.
and it's not as expensive. But the alcohol-free beers, I totally get. There's a really good science that goes into making them. They're properly brewed. There's some technology in regards to moving the alcohol and rehydrating. I think there's something there. But what the great thing is, and like Guinness Zero is insanely good.
It is, totally agree.
And actually, people now, I think, are choosing to drink that because it's almost cool. It's like, well, that's cool. It's becoming a bit of a thing to stop drinking. And, you go to a pub and you say, can I have a Guinness? There's a couple of places where people are still, it's funny, but you can sit there, and be the same. We've had a few boys' nights out, and normally it'd be very uncomfortable initially, where they're like, oh, Brian's not drinking, But you've got a beer in your hands, and they don't care whether the sticker says 0 on it. They don't care. It's just you've got a beer in your hand, and that's that. And actually, in many of the cases, we did a lads, which is my group of friends from when we were at school. There's 5 or 6 of us that meet, and we met up in October last year. And I think maybe 3 of us weren't drinking, maybe even 4 of us. And it was just a different kind of event, and it just didn't feel any different. There just wasn't that, oh, I wish I hadn't said that last night. And resort back to that kind of 16, 18-year-old self. And I just think it's becoming more normal. But definitely the alcohol-free beer helps. Our fridge is no longer stacked because we've got to a point where it's nice to have. I had one yesterday when we had a barbecue. It scratches that itch, and that's all it is. But yeah, that's a game changer.
It really is. And interestingly enough, I was down south visiting a friend a month or so ago, and she took me out to a restaurant and said, "Oh, she's going to have this particular cocktail." And I was flicking through the menu. I was like, "I can't find the non-alcoholic cocktails." The mocktails, as they call them. And she pointed to the top of the drinks page, which was a massive sheet. And she pointed to the top. The whole of their drinks, wine, champagne, everything was non-alcoholic. The whole thing. And I was like, I've never seen anything like it before. And I mean, there must have been easily 100 different things. And they weren't, I obviously didn't try them all. But it was an amazing thing to see. And I think that, I think that's quite a big move that a lot of people are starting to recognise now. What would are there any other...
It's like you said.
Go on, carry on.
Sorry, it's like you said, Jules. It's becoming normal now to not drink. And certainly not to drink in that way that we have drunk, where, it's pints at the pub and, bottles of wine after, blah, blah, blah. This younger generation, whether it's millennials or Gen Z, are comfortable not drinking. And actually, as a result of that, the market understands that and are making more products. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in 5-10 years' time, and how we've realised forget the cost of drinking, which is insane. £7 a pint it was like, back in the old days, when cigarettes reach £2 a packet, I'm stopping. And now I think, £5 maybe it was. Cigarettes are like, I think 15 quid or something a packet. It's just insane. I think the cost of drinking is is ridiculously high. Albeit it's very nice having a lovely glass of wine with a lovely dinner, but it's not the be all and end all. The company is and the food is, and actually, it's just if you go to Italy, it's very difficult because they don't like people that don't drink, and they just give you like Sprite or they don't look after you. There's no alcoholic drink.
It's a bit like trying to be a vegetarian in France.
Literally, here's a salad. But I think it's changing. I think times are changing, and I think that at the moment, I think there's a lot of people that are interested in the idea. I hear more and more about it, and not because I go on asking for people. I just see it more around, and I think in a few years' time, there's going to be a lot of people that have gone. Well, actually, I don't think drinking was particularly good for me. Good for my mental health, but certainly not good for my physical health, emotional health. It's not great for relationships. Not all the time, but some bits. And certainly there's enough evidence out there to say that it has a lot of negative health impacts, whether it's cancer or whatever, that make you think, actually, should I really be doing this? Is it, is that 2% worth it? Or can I sacrifice that for longer, full-time, kind of fuller, rounded, healthy outcomes? And it seems a small trade-off to me.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think the thing that I've found fascinating is the amount of times when I say to people they'll often buy me a drink and I say, I don't drink alcohol. And the amount of times, I would say easily 80% of the time, people will go, oh God, I wish I didn't. And I find that really fascinating, the amount of people that say that they wish that they didn't, and yet they still do. And beating the same drum of saying, that's why I wanted to share your story, because it wasn't one of catastrophe of why you've given up. It was just that recognition of the impact that it was having on your life, and wanting to explore that challenge, setting yourself that 30-day challenge, which is now a year and a half later, which is really cool. Are there, and this may be to do with that challenge, or it may be to do with anything else, but is there anything else that you would offer out as advice or guidance for people to be able to deal with life's chaos? Because you have, as you've already alluded to, that you're running your own businesses. You have a family with 3 children. You commute to different locations for what you're doing. So life can get a bit hectic at times, as well as running up and down the fells in the Lake District. Is there anything else that you would offer out as advice or guidance for people to help navigate that, the busyness and the chaos that life can be sometimes?
There's nothing profound. I think for me, the most simple thing I do, is walk. And I'm not sure if this is the right kind of answer for this kind of question, but for me, this just going out and, we're very fortunate now we live in the Lake District. But even when we lived in Shrewsbury, we lived just off the town centre, and we'd walk most evenings, whether it's after tea or with the kids, whether it's early in the morning, whether it's at work and just going out and having a walking meeting. But just that stepping out of your current situation, whether that's your workplace, whether that's at home, and breathing and feeling kind of the health benefits, the kind of the connecting with nature. If you live in the town centre, it's a bit busier, but there's parks, and it isn't so much about just the nature side of it. But for us in the lakes, as I say, we're fortunate because we can just disappear out and problems just drip away, and challenges drip away. And certainly if you've had a stressful day and we're like, and moving to the Lake District was mega stressful. Like, it would have just been raped back to a bull with drinking. It would have been like, this is the most stressful thing ever. Let's just smash the drink. And it would have been insane last year. And then we would have been like super celebrating because how amazing are we? We moved to the Lake District and survived it. After more drinks. But what we did instead was we just started walking, a bit kind of Forrest Gump-esque, is just walk. This isn't difficult. If your walking means, putting your headphones on and listening, if your walking means phoning your mum, speaking to your sister, speaking to your kids and actually connecting and just saying, right, what's going on? And, sometimes around the table, it's a bit difficult with a busy household and busy dynamic and, rushing tea and trying to force your kids to eat something other than pesto pasta. But walking seems to be a really great leveler in just being and just being out there. It's so easy. It's like the most basic, natural human capability. And we don't do it. We jump in our car and go, I'm going to go to the shop. It's like, the shop's there. Just walk. It's so straightforward. And it's insanely good for you. It's good for your mental health. It's good for your physical health. It's good for sustainability. We're not using cars everywhere. I just think it's so straightforward. It's so straightforward. Seems like a good recommendation. We all know how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a small percentage of people that are able to, but the majority of us can, and it is accessible and it is free. And I think that it's one of the reasons I got a dog. Lockdown, I went out walking a lot more, and that's why I was like, I'm going to get a dog, because actually then that's going to force me to, especially when the weather turns. Because I don't want to go out when it's rainy and it's cold and it's windy, but I have to now because the dog needs it. And actually, that walking out, especially when I've had a lot on business-wise, even when the weather's terrible, I've actually found it amazingly refreshing, because it's given me that distance from things. As you say, you walk out and it's like things just drop away, and your focus goes on whatever it is that you can see, and you're there, and it's just one foot in front of the other, and keeping going. No matter if you're walking half a mile, 100 miles, it really doesn't matter to that extent, but it is about just taking that time and going and walking, or giving yourself that space away from things. And I think that what I notice, I've got another client that I'm thinking of that he does all sorts of fitnessy things, but he started with his eldest son, who I think is about 10 or 11. He started taking him out walking and running. And they're obviously not going that far because of his age, but nonetheless, he's like the difference in their relationship. He said, I didn't expect it to have that much of an impact from a relationship perspective. But he said now his son, who was reserved, is now talking to him a lot more about things, because it's that side by side as opposed to face conversation. And I think because of the simplicity of walking and the accessibility of it, we forget the power of it. So I love that you've offered that out. I think it's a brilliant, brilliant reminder. So is there anything else, as I always ask this, is there anything else about anything that we've spoken about, or anything else that I haven't asked that you want to share?
Oh, I'm sure I've probably missed out bits and pieces. It's, as I say, this is, a very unique journey. I think from what I understand, when I've looked into it and thought about it a bit more, the move to the Lake District gave me the chance to do almost a hard reset. And so I think that first stage is quite important and like you say, kind of forewarning people. You've really got to be tough. You've got to build that resilience and be ready for this. But and certainly moving to the lakes allowed us to go there with a new narrative. And I think from what I've read, that's seems to be a good way that people do it, but it's not available to everyone now. So I don't think it's, that has to work, but I think it helps us a lot. I don't know, I think what I look back on now is 47 years old, probably started drinking in at 14. Definitely shouldn't have done, but that was the way it was. That's how life was back then.
Me too.
It's an absolutely belting relationship. I've had a brilliant time, and that's how I look at it. It's been 33 years of fantastic fun. I miss drinking, and I've kind of loved it, and it's been a great journey and like a great holiday. You kind of celebrate it and reminisce. But it's done now. I've kind of done that, and it's time to move forwards and to look at that next chapter. And that's okay. Things are going to be different. It's okay. And so I think it's just having confidence that there will be something different, and the benefits just keep on coming. Like literally just keep on coming. And I've probably missed out so many different things that have been upside. There genuinely hasn't been any downside. And that's bananas. To think that I only thought of downside, and actually there hasn't been any to think about. I can't recount it, and that's not me being disingenuous. I just can't think of any.
I don't think in the time that we've been working together that you've ever expressed any downside, actually. I think you've only ever had that accumulation. It's like that snowball of going, oh, I've discovered this, or I've discovered this is a benefit, this is a benefit. And that has just continued to roll. So I think that's a perfect way to end. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm sure that it will inspire others. And it may not be alcohol. It may be something else. It may be crisps. It may be chocolate. It may be, I don't know. It may be something else that they decide to social media to go, do you know what? I'm just going to set myself a challenge for 30 days and see what happens, what's on the other side of that. Because in my experience with the amount of things that I've removed out of my life in a similar way of just going, I'm just going to do it for a month and see what happens, is I don't think I've ever, I'm racking my brain very quickly, and I've done things like bread and coffee and TV and all sorts of different things that I've removed out of my life for a period of time. I don't think I've ever really experienced a really bad downside at all. It's only ever exposed me to something that I didn't know that was there, or given me the opportunity to remove something that I didn't know it was hiding. So thank you so much, Brian.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
I look forward to catching up with you again very soon, and I look forward to listening. We'll obviously put all of your details in the show notes for everybody, but thank you very much, and I look forward to catching up with you all on another episode of Coming to Your Senses.
Amazing. Cheers, Jules.